Hey coders, welcome back. So leaving off where we left off, we created a short game where we can simply create an object and move it. So recapping things, we made a rectangle. It can move left and right, down and up, and that's about it so far. That's what we got. Um, so I wanted to go a little step further and go, right now, if I were to move this character around, it can actually leave the screen. And one of the things I want to create when I'm making a game is probably a boundary of some sort where that can't happen. I can't just leave the map. So if it's a scroller, a side scroller like a airplane fighting game or something of the sort, or if it's even Pong just going up and down, I want to create some boundaries for this thing where it can't move past that point. So a couple things to change things up. I'm going to start by making my display window a variable. And I'm going to make use of that because if I ever want to change it, I want to just change the variables and have everything in the code change with it. So I'm going to do a window width, and I can set that to the 500 that I have. I want to do a window height and do the same thing there. Now, if I want to change the level size, I can always do it on the fly. But then here in my display, then that's what I'll have. I'll have window width, and over here, I'll have window height. And we're setting that because we're going to set some parameters that keeps that constrained. So that's my first kind of step. Next thing I want to do is I want to see the border here. So right now I can't see where this thing really ends. There's kind of this black mass that's happening here. And so if I change my window fill to another color, I'm going to do kind of like a grayish, I think. If I do all these at the same number, I get a shade of gray of some sort. And I'll see if that will actually run for me. And I can see my borders then. So there it is. Now I can see the difference between the background of my game and then just a general generic border here. By the way, my window was like this before. And what happens is it cuts off the bottom. So I'm moving my window so I can see where the actual bottom ends here. Okay, a couple things to be helpful there. So now we have that defined, and we can look through that idea. So next, let's try to figure out how do I actually set my parameters here. So I'm looking here at the key systems, and right now it's just a free-for-all. You can move left or right, up or down, any way you want, unconstrained. And so what I'm thinking is I want to add some constraints. Here's the first one. If I'm moving left, left on my coordinates is my closest to 0 on the x. So my thought is I want to check, can I move left by checking is x greater than really 0. So I'll start with that idea. And then my right is going to be closest to 500. So, or whatever my number is, so my window width. So I'm going to go ahead and set that constraint. X has to be less than my window width. What do we call it? Call it window width. There it is. That's a general idea. So let's test it and see what it looks like. And that'll tell me if that's what I actually wanted to do. So looking here, it's where I start. I move here. Kinda. You see that I kind of actually continue moving into that space a bit. I'm not sure I love that. And then over here, all the way to the right side, okay, my whole thing disappeared. Now, if I press left, it comes right back, which means it's right there at the border. Here's what's happening. Right here in the corner is my actual value for x. It's not the whole object. It's actually a point right here in the corner. So if I need to do is actually take out the width here so it stops before it hits the edge. So I'm actually going to reduce the frame I have by the width of the rectangle. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to say take my window width, but then subtract. That's actually too far. I want you to take out the width of the rectangle. And that should be sufficient. On the other side, I actually landed all the way through. So here's my thought. If I am moving by my velocity of 5 pixels or frames or whatever you want to look at it here, it's pixels in this case, and I hit 0, it allows me to go one more velocity past it, which actually brings me to -5 in our case for velocity. So my thought is let's just make it less than velocity. if it ends up being greater than my velocity. So if it ends up being 5, I get one more movement, brings me to 0, and I have to stop. That could work. I probably want to do the same thing here. I want to do 1 less than my movement speed, so it stops before I leave. Let's try to run that. This is really common when you're making a game. You want to set your boundaries. So I can still see the rectangle. That's exactly what I want. And then jump into this side. I can still see the rectangle. Nothing gets cut off. That's what I want. So it looks like left and right is set. So that's a really common thing when making a game. You set your boundaries so you can't leave the map. Same thing for up and down then. It's actually a very similar structure. Same thing for Y values. Remember, a Y controls the up and down. So Y should be greater than the velocity. That seems right. And then for down, same issue. I'll leave the map unless I give myself some extra here. So I'm going to say Y has to be less than the window height. And then same issue. In that corner, I want to actually add this height where I can't leave. So I'm going to take that out of my boundary. So minus the height and then minus the velocity. And then we'll just test it and see if it actually does everything we're hoping for. Okay, so we saw left and right. Let's just try up and down. So if I go all the way up, it stops me there. Great. All the way down, and it stops me there. That's exactly what I want. So that is basic boundaries. Now we know how to do movement and then constrain that movement by a boundary. And now you have a basic structure for a game. Now we got to build the rest.